Alright, hello everyone and welcome to NFL Discussion. I'm your host and NFL enthusiast, Doug. In today's episode, I'm going to be discussing Monday Night Football, Week 6 of the 2022 NFL season. And this was an ugly game of football. Normally, divisional games are hard fought. Normally, they're tough. Normally, points. Normally, it looks more evenly matched. And even though this was a close game, a competitive game, and it ended up going to overtime, ultimately I think the reason why this game went into overtime is because of how bad both offenses are, instead of this being a divisional game where two teams know each other so well they battle it out. And we'll go ahead and take a deeper dive into this game, starting with the Broncos. Russell Wilson completed 15 of 28 passes for 188 yards and 1 touchdown. So he started his game hot, completing his first 10 passes, which included a touchdown to Greg Dolchich. I hope I said that right, probably didn't, but it all went downhill from there. The offensive game plan was bad once again, and Wilson completed just 3 of 11 passes for 15 yards after halftime. Yikes. Denver ended up blowing a 10-0 lead, and the Chargers tried to hand the Broncos the win this one with how bad their offense was playing. Wilson has topped 237 yards passing 1 time since week 1 and has 5 touchdown passes through 6 games. A rough start for a guy on a new $250 million contract. Wilson will try to get right against the Jets in week 7, but I don't think anybody's expecting that right now. I certainly am not. The Jets are also playing good football right now too, so I don't know how much of a get right spot that is. And really looking at the takeaways for the Broncos here, Russell Wilson did figure out how to play good football at first. Like I said, he started off the game hot, but then he kind of fell apart after that. So can he figure out how to play a full game of football? Most people are probably going to say no. I'm going to say TBD on that one. Denver's defense, though, continues to play great football, but they also show that they are not going to carry this team to victory without adequate support from the offense. And also, Nathaniel Hackett. I don't think I've ever, Nathaniel Hackett, certainly the calls for him to be one and done are loud, and I think with this latest performance, he has continued to make a case for being one and done. And some people just aren't cut out to be a head coach, and maybe that's Nathaniel Hackett. Maybe he's just a better coordinator than a head coach. I don't think Rob Walton, the new owner, has any loyalty to him. He wasn't the guy who hired him, so I don't know what the relationship is like between those two. I don't know what the relationship is like between Hackett and Wilson, but ultimately, if you're gonna last long in the NFL as a head coach, you gotta show promise. You gotta show that you're worthy of a year or two, that if you're given a second year, that things will look better than they did the first time around. I think back to Vance Joseph. Vance Joseph had a rough start for the Broncos. He was given a second season, and ultimately that didn't really work, and it didn't really work out for him. And Nathaniel Hackett hasn't really shown much through this season to basically show any promise, any potential for the future of this team, that and really again continues to make a case to be one and done. I'd hate to see a guy be one and done, but when your team's on prime time for the past couple weeks and both of those games are just ugly and they go into overtime, it's not a good look. And I think that's one of the reasons, one of the things working against Denver is being in prime time. When you play bad football in prime time, your issues get magnified, they get talked about, because that's all you put out there is negative football. If you put out good football, I don't think we'd be having this conversation. But you're putting out negative football, and you're doing so on a prime time stage, so everybody gets to see it. As for the Chargers, Justin Herbert completed 37 of 57 passes for 238 scoreless yards and 1 interception. So Herbert's best passing plays in this one were defensive pass interferences. Herbert had 1 completion of more than 14 yards, averaging a sad 4.2 yards per attempt on his 57 throws. He was also under a lot of pressure, but the offensive game plan from both the Chargers and the Broncos were embarrassing. Mike Williams couldn't shake past their 10 sticky coverage, and the Bolts had to rely on an injured Dustin Hopkins to carry them to an unearned victory. Herbert gets a get-right spot at home against the Seahawks in Week 7. And speaking of the kicker, their kicker Dustin Hopkins on one bad leg, their kicker Dustin Hopkins was the best player in the game for this team. And if he ends up missing time, I think this team will be in trouble. Also, J.C. Jackson, their big free agent acquisition at quarterback, well, he struggled so bad in this game he got benched. Now, good on the coaching staff for recognizing that he was playing bad and pulling him and not being loyal to him over his contract. But if you look at his contract, you think, and you see the money he's being paid, well, hopefully he figures out what is wrong in short order. I also saw something too about Brandon Staley and his job as well too. I didn't think about it at first, but even with the injuries in the offense, even without Keenan out, I don't think Brandon Staley doesn't call plays on offense, but Joe Lombardi did not put on a good game plan here. He did not make himself look good in this game. And also Brandon Staley, with his game management, didn't really make himself look good here either. Now, I don't know if firing both of those guys is the right call to make, but I think when you have a Chargers team with a franchise guy like Justin Herbert and the talent you have around them, yeah, you got to have the right coaching staff. And I think asking the question of if Joe Lombardi is the right coordinator for Justin Herbert and if Brandon Staley is the right coach for this team, I think those are valid questions to ask. Now, as I said, I don't know if the right answer is to fire those guys, but I think definitely watching where this team goes from here will certainly kind of better answer that question. So I have no answer on that question of firing those guys, fixing anything. And I think the biggest takeaway from this game was dirty laundry everywhere. There were 147 combined penalty yards in the first half, and the game finished with 240 combined penalty yards. For our primetime stage, it was an ugly performance that both teams will want to correct quickly if they can. They will not keep pace with the Chiefs. The AFC West is there. All of these teams can try to do is hold on to a wild card spot, and for the Broncos, who are currently sitting at under 500, that's a tall task. I don't know if they're up to it. So yeah, that's Monday Night Football in a nutshell right there. And with that, we'll wrap up the discussion on Monday Night Football and move into my favorite segment of the week, that being the throwing in the towel segment. So every week, I pick one team based off so basically, throughout the week of football that was, I looked at every team that lost, did a quick glance over their performance, and then basically kind of made a decision on who I thought, after this week of football, were pretenders, not contenders, and I basically just throw in a towel on their season. Now, this only extends to teams that lost. There were 4 teams on the bye, so I guess congrats Detroit and Las Vegas. You get a pass for this week. And just to recap where we started and where we are now, week 1 it was the Jets, who have turned things around since week 1. Still not entirely sold on them, but I'm liking what they're doing. Week 2, it was the Texans who fired Jack Easterby. I think he was their executive vice president of football. So good news is that Houston finally made a serious change for once, but will it lead to anything? Probably not. Week 3, it was the Seahawks. They did get a win over the Cardinals, but also the Cardinals aren't really good on offense at the moment. They did add Robbie Anderson and get DeAndre Hopkins, so maybe that turns things around for them. Week 4 was the Panthers, who pretty much lost their first game post Matt Rule, and also kicked one of their players off the sideline, that being Robbie Anderson, and they kicked him off the team by trading him. So that's where they're at right now. And week 5, it was the Steelers, who yes did get a win against the Buccaneers, but also the Buccaneers, they feel and look vulnerable. Like they seem like an easy team to beat, which really shouldn't be the case with who is their quarterback and the talent they have. But nonetheless, the Steelers pulled it off. But Kenny Pickett went down with a concussion, and Mitchell Trubisky is back under center. So who knows what that means for them? Yeah. But I think TJ Watt is going to be making his return. I think the Steelers go on bye next, and then TJ Watt comes back after that. I don't think that's quite correct, but TJ Watt is close to making his return, so maybe things will get better for the Steelers, but probably won't matter enough for them to be contenders. And then this week's team, pretty much my pick in the AFC was the Broncos, and my pick in the NFC was the Bears. So when you have the Broncos versus the Bears, ultimately I decided to go with this week's team, the Chicago Bears. And really, For the Bears, they can be hard to watch. They're short-handed at wide receiver and along the offensive line, which led to their quarterback taking an absolute beating in that game against the Commanders for everybody to see because it was Thursday night. Also, the coaching staff does not act like they trust their quarterback enough to hand him the offensive reins, nor be able to run the ball, I should say. And despite being able to run the ball, they have two good running backs, David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert. They scored just 7 points on Thursday night. Chicago ranks near the bottom of the league in scoring offense, and their next couple of matchups are against the Patriots and Cowboys, both of whom have top 7 scoring defenses. So it looks like things will get worse for the Bears before they can get better. But ultimately, with the way this team is set up, they look like pretenders from the start. They have played like pretenders. And yeah, I don't think they're going to be in contention this season. And yeah, with that, that's my team for this week, the Chicago Bears. They are pretenders, not contenders. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up this episode of NFL Discussion. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that like button down below.